Hey everyone, it's Alex, and welcome to the Marvel Snap Decks of the Week, the weekly series where I show you guys top 5 meta decks to help you gain rank in Marvel Snap. As always, the link to my Twitch is down in the description below. I'd love for you to join us live, and smash the like button if you'd like to support the series. This week, we've got 5 whole new decks and a lot of changes, especially with the looming potential patch update, so keep an eye on the channel for updates with regards to the best upcoming builds after the patch. With that being said, let's move on to deck number 1. This week, we're going to start our discussion with the Pool 3 Sera list, Serra Zoo. Now, the Sera lists have been seeing a little bit of adaptation and some modification over the last few weeks, and this Serra Zoo list is one of the new variants that I think is extremely successful in the current meta. So first of all, it has to do with Sera. Sera is a 5 cost 5 that has the important ongoing ability that it basically reduces the cost of all your cards in your hand by 1. This is super beneficial because on turn 6, you're going to want to have some cards to play. Generally speaking, you really benefit from having 3 cost cards, which then cost 2. You could play 3 2-cost cards, or you can have 2-cost cards that turn into 1 cost, so you can just zoo them out like crazy. So naturally, you're going to want cards like Angela in there to really ramp up in pure value. Now, this list has a couple different things going for it. First of all, with the prevalence of Shang-Chi, I think Jessica Jones is a better play over Rescue, which I do see in some lists as well. Rescue is still good, but I think that Jessica Jones is a little better as it remains an 8 cost, with having a downside of not being able to play in that lane relatively easy to deal with on turn 5, because you're playing only Sera. The key thing is here is that you really want to use Killmonger to buff up your board using that Nova synergy there. You also have the Carnage, which works wonderfully with Mysterio, but most importantly, the way it usually works is you have a couple major players here. First of all, you have Okoye. If you wish, with Okoye, you can actually include Mr. Sinister as well in this list, but with Okoye here, basically you're giving +1 power to everything in your deck. That benefits Brood, because all the Broodlings will have the additional power. Moreover, Mr. Sinister is more or less the same, but I cut Mr. Sinister here in favor of Sentinel, who I actually, in testing, feel like everyone's sleeping on this card in this deck. You get a very consistent play that works wonderfully with Sera, so you can just keep playing Sentinel, and it ensures you have a play on turn 6 that's pretty damn reliable, so you don't run out of cards. I actually really like Sentinel in this list. Turn 3, you generally want to get Bishop out there. Bishop's great because then on turn 4, you follow up with Mysterio, and the Mysterio and the Illusions actually proc a +3 value on Bishop, getting him to 3-4 pretty much immediately, which is of insane value. It's also worth noting that Forge is generally played in conjunction with the Brood. You buff them, and then the Broodlings get the value as well from Forge. From there, I do think that this deck is really damn good. I do suspect that Sera might get nerfed in the upcoming patches, so keep an eye on this list and how it can change. Sera is likely to still remain a very powerful card in the meta, but with nerfs, the potential for nerfs anyways, this could very rapidly change. Coming in at number 2 for this week is going to be the Ongoing Destroyer list. This is a list that I think actually is a whole lot of fun to play with multiple win conditions, which I think a lot of people really appreciate. There's a couple things that make this list really good. First of all, there are a core number of cards here that really work well in synergy together. You have the Ant-Man that works wonderfully with the Mojo, which works wonderfully with the Armor, and of course the Warpath. Now the advantage to this is now you have an indestructible lane with a lot of internal synergy. If they zoo into the Mojo, they get punished. If you zoo into the Ant-Man, you get a benefit. Moreover, it's also hittable by both Spectrum and obviously immune to being destroyed by the Destroyer, which is super good and one of the reasons why this list works so well. However, one of the things you need to understand is in order to run the Spectrum, which is good because in case like you don't have armor and you have someone like Professor X, which again locks the lane, the Spectrum gives you additional reach into that lane to buff up those cards to ensure the win. But it can be a little harder to trade Spectrum in the other lane, the second lane. That's where Destroyer excels. So this list is kind of like the 2-lane Destroyer. I know a lot of people really like this list. It is relatively straightforward to pilot with the exception of that turn 6 play. Now me, I like the 2-lane Destroyer in the sense that I really like playing someone like Bucky Barnes into a solo lane, because that Bucky Barnes, when you play the Destroyer on it, procs the Winter Soldier, so you get 6 in addition to the Destroyer 16, which basically makes it extremely hard for the opponent to trade into you, providing that the Warpath Armor lane is able to win the lane. So this is an ongoing variation of that 2-lane Destroyer list, which a lot of people are finding success with on the ladder. For deck number 3, we're sticking to Pool 3, and we are talking about the Wongoing list. That's right, we're still talking about ongoing cards because they are super good right now. I'm actually super scared they're going to get nerfed. Wong in particular. But anyways, Wong is one of the cards in the game that I think is amazing. It's such a cool design. It has an interesting counter in the sense that like it kind of tells your opponent, hey, I'm going to play here. Come counter me. That's countered by both Cosmo and by Enchantress. At first glance, it seems overpowered, right? But there's so many available counters to it. But when you don't counter it, you get punished by a list like this. basically what you've got here is you got an ongoing list. Yes, you got the zoo cards like the Ant-Man. You've got the Ebony Maw that can solo win a lane. You can almost play Ebony Maw in one lane, kind of like a Namor, for instance, and just literally buff it over and over and over again. It's up to you. Goose can be super restrictive for both you and the opponent. If you don't like playing Goose, put Quinjet in instead. But Goose can be really interesting, especially when played in conjunction with Ebony Maw. It makes it that much harder for them to contest the Ebony Maw lane. Moreover, I do like the Invisible Woman play. What I like to do is Invisible Woman into the Wong, into a turn 5 Mystique, into the turn 6 Spectrum. It is beautiful, as you might suggest. But anyways, Mojo's a great card here as well to kind of prevent them from zooming into you and winning that lane. The extra power you get from the 4 on each side is super good. Obviously, it does not work very well in conjunction with Ebony Maw. It's unlikely you're able to get there, but with the other lanes, it can possibly work, specifically when played on top of the Invisible Woman as well. I like the reach of Mr. Fantastic. Colossus is a great card for reaching into locations that might be problematic. Blue Marvel is actually one of the ones where it's like, you can even cut Blue Marvel here, because I really do actually prefer the Mystique on 5 after you play the Wong on 4, but at the same time, Blue Marvel is also a very good option as well. Really kind of helps boost your board, and obviously the Spectrum play is phenomenal as well. But regardless, I do think the Wongoing lists are incredible value. They're incredibly fun to pilot as well, and very few players will really like anticipate the burst potential of Wong Mystique Spectrum on an ongoing list. A lot of people are sleeping on Deathwave. This was one of the deck lists that was like incredibly popular during beta, and then what happened was like as the game got released, the beta players kind of like fell asleep on it a little bit, and then it didn't really have much of a resurgence until relatively recently, when people were like, oh yeah, that list exists because of a major synergy a lot of people sleep on, and that is the synergy between Death and Wave. Hey, it's called Deathwave. I wonder why. But the key thing here is that Wave will reduce your, will actually set, I shouldn't say reduce, but set the costs of both players' cards in their hand to 4. The benefit of that on turn 6, because you play Wave on turn 5, is that you're going to have someone like Chavez, for sure, on turn 6. Chavez is going to cost 4. And if you at least destroy 2 cards, Yondu destroys a card, I mean, Deathlock destroys cards, Carnage destroys cards, the Hood gets destroyed by Killmonger, Nova does as well. If you just destroy 2 cards at any point in time, Death on turn 6 only costs 2. Because the way it works is that basically Wave will reset Death's mana cost to 4, and then Death's ability, which costs 1 less for each card destroyed this game, is then applied. That means that Death will be 4 negative however many you've destroyed, and if you've at least done 2, that means you can play Chavez in addition to the Death, which is insane. That's like an insane value play on 6. Moreover, let's say you want to be able to be disruptive. That's where Arrow comes in. So instead of playing Chavez on 6, you can play something like Death and Arrow. And that's an amazing thing, because you play Death and then Arrow will reset whoever they play. So if it's a 50-50 and like you know Death's going to win the lane provided they don't play there, play the Death, play Arrow on the other side, and you actually completely obstruct their ability to play the board. This list is super amazing at that. The turn 6 play is super oppressive and very hard for your opponent to predict, especially since, realistically, it really feels like just a regular destroy deck. And I mean, at the end of the day, what they should know, when they see the Wave on turn 5, it should be like ring, 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 alarm bells, I think I'm going to get Death Waved, right? That's exactly the major cue, but they don't always expect Arrow. They don't always expect Arrow, and that's what makes this deck so damn effective. Don't worry guys, for all you elite gamers still stuck in Pool 2, I've got a deck for you, and we're talking about the Pool 2 movement deck, one of my favorite decks in Marvel Snap, and legit a super powerful deck in Pool 2. The reason for this is because you do have the Enchantress, who can also be swapped out for Shang-Chi if you want to punch some Devil Dinos, but I do like the Enchantress because it counters not only Devil Dinosaur, but it also counters the Blue Marvels and Khazars type zoos. But then again, you do have the Killmonger here who counters them as well. You're thinking, Alex, you got a move deck with Killmonger. What the hell is this? Well, the reason for this is because, quite frankly, you don't really need Iron Fist that much to stay on the board. Iron Fist is good for kind of multiple man and for Kraven, and if he dies, he just dies. Who cares, right? The Nova, of course, you want Nova to die because you want that +1 value across the board, especially when it hits multiple man, who then, when he replicates, gets the additional value as well for every replication. Cloak, Doctor Strange, Vulture, these are all amazing move-based cards. The major synergy you need to be aware of is multiple men put on the board into a solo lane, and then on turn 3, you follow up with the Hulkbuster, who will apply this +4 power to the multiple man, and that +4 power remains with every multiple man that gets multiplied. I can't believe I actually even managed to say that. Wow, so confusing. But anyways, and then on turn 6, you got a couple different options. You might notice there's no turn 5 play here. That's because, generally speaking, you'll want to play Enchantress on turn 5 with something else to counter, or you're going to want to play a 3 in conjunction with a 2. Usually you dump your hand there on turn 5, and then you resultingly hit him with Heimdall if you need to get that move, or you hit him with the Chavez if you're in a winning position and you don't want to move. It's also very important to note that Chavez is important so that you can have a much more consistent draw. The value of having the Iron Fist into the multiple man, into the Hulkbuster is super valuable. In addition, someone like Kraven being in that middle lane relatively early as you move guys around with Doctor Strange and Iron Fist is super valuable as well. You really want that draw consistency, that America Chavez provides. Anyways, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I've got another video for you down below. If you want to see more deck lists, I've got more deck lists. For last week's video I featured, it's down below. Check it out. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in that next Marvel Snap video.